everybody and welcome back to the Matura Express. Today we're going to talk about note-taking. Oh, there I am. Okay, so as I just said, we're going to talk about note-taking today, and especially about basic note-taking skills for the monologue that you have to prepare for your exam. So what are we going to do in detail? We're going to first look at the importance of note-taking in an oral exam. So why is it important? Why is it important to really think about note-taking, not just take notes, whatever. And then we're going to talk about two different ways of taking notes. So one is bullet points and the other one is mind maps. Which one you prefer really depends on your preference and how you feel like you see your notes better. Some people like mind maps, some people like bullet points. Personally, I like bullet points better, but that's just my own opinion. So you really have to think about that for yourself. So, what is the importance of note-taking in an oral exam? First of all, note-taking helps you to structure your thoughts. So you might think in your head that, oh, you have this topic prepared quite well, you really know a lot about it, you have a lot to say, but then you kind of maybe have too much to say, or you don't really know how to structure your monologue. And that's where note-taking comes in. So you can very nicely just map out kind of your ideas and just jot them down in the order that you're going to say them later, which can really help you, especially if you have that picture in mind then when you're presenting. Also some people can remember things better by writing them down. I don't know if you notice sometimes when you're studying and you write something down that you feel like you remember it better, you can kind of memorize it better. And then note-taking is definitely a good thing for you. And also it can help you to remember vocabulary. So when you're writing something down about a specific topic, then you might look at the words that are there, and then you might think of other words that could go quite well with those, that could be quite helpful when you're talking about that specific topic. So that's really the main things about why note-taking is so important. And now I'd say we just jump right in and look at the first option that we have today here, which is bullet points. So when you are using the method of bullet points, remember to maybe use different symbols for different parts of your monologue. So for example, for every different bullet point that you have given in your exam paper, use a different symbol in your notes, which will then help you later on when you have that picture in mind of your bullet points, of your notes, to remember which is which. So which notes link to which bullet point in your exam. Also, it's really important not to write whole sentences, because that just defeats the whole purpose of taking notes. You really should just write down only the important things. So only facts, verbs, descriptions that are really important, that you really need to know and need to incorporate in your speech. Because if you write whole sentences, then you're never going to remember them. You're way more likely to remember single words than whole sentences, because you just can't fit the whole image in your head. That's It's just the way it is. Also, what might really help you is to use colors to differentiate the different bullet points and the different topics that appear in your monologue. I already told you to only write down the important things is a really, really good tip. And also, as I already said again, to remember to structure your notes in the order that you want to present them. So it's really helpful, usually, if you put your notes in the way that you're then going to say them in your speech, because then you can immediately think, the first one was that, the second one was, or the middle one was that, the last one was this and that. So like that, it's way easier, especially for people who think in pictures, who can really remember that sheet of notes. It's really easy for them especially, but I think also for everybody to just structure your notes very carefully. Now, here we have an example situation and task 1 from one of the exams that we're going to go through next week, actually, which is you're in the situation that you work for Greenpeace UK and you specialize in global warming. You have been invited to hold a talk in an Austrian school about the issue. Your task is to introduce the students on the issue to the issue of global warming. So here you have your 3 important bullet points to remember. Number 1, explain the concept of global warming. Number 2, describe some of the consequences global warming has on our environment. And number 3, talk about what people could do against global warming. So I've now prepared an example of how your notes could look like. Of course, these are typed with the computer, but still you can kind of see what you could do here. So for the first bullet point that you have to incorporate is about global warming. What is global warming? So I've, as you can see, I've used different symbols for the 3 different bullet points, or the 3 different parts of this monologue. And global warming. You could say it is when the core temperature of the Earth gets higher. And why is that? Is because of pollution, or a big part of it is because of pollution. So exhaust fumes from cars, from transportation, from factories and so on. And also because of destruction of forests is something that you could possibly say. Then the next bullet point wants you to talk about the consequences of global warming. So you could, for example, jot down that one consequence is there's extreme weather conditions. So, for example, droughts, heat waves, storms, floods. As you can see, I've always only just put down the keywords that are really important to me. So just extreme weather, and then I've included some examples for that. Also, species go extinct, so special animals and different types of animals go extinct because of global warming. Ice caps melt. Yeah, there's actually lots of things that you might think of. It's really something that everybody has kind of in their head. And the last bullet point that you would have to talk about here is what people could do against global warming. So I have kind of an overall note here that would be to lead a sustainable lifestyle. So what is that now? And then I've kind of put a little bit of an under category. So a sustainable lifestyle, for example, you could buy clothing, food, and just lots of different day-to-day products locally. So go to your nearest kind of farm shop, or even in a supermarket, look at where things are produced and maybe think about buying something that's not from very far away, but maybe produced more locally. Also think about public transport. Using public transport is a really easy and very good way, especially in the city, to act against global warming. And you could of course even go by bike or by foot if you don't have a very far distance to go, but in general public transport is a very, very good way to do that. And also trying to use renewable energies more is another thing that I've jotted down here. This is more concerning homeowners and so on and so forth. So, for example, when you have your own home, think about using solar energy panels to make up your power. Yeah, that's how note-taking by using bullet points might look like. As you can see, again, it's really important to have the different symbols, because otherwise it just looks all the same and you can't really remember it in your head. I think that's really the most important thing here. And also kind of structure it the way you then want it to say. And as you can see, I've really only just put down important words, keywords, because otherwise there's just too much text on this one sheet. And that's really not what we want. Now there's also another option or another way. Of course, there's many more ways to take notes, but those are the kind of two most popular ones. You can of course take notes however way you want, but in general those are two very good ways, and that will make your note-taking and your preparation time way easier, and also make note-taking way quicker. So, mind maps. Some people really like them. I personally don't so much because I'm not really that kind of a visual thinker. But yeah, they're really useful for some people, especially if you use colors for the different kind of parts of your speech. Also, you really have to remember to make use of the whole sheet that you have. So don't just kind of restrict your mind map to this small little area when you have a whole big A4 sheet to fill. You can definitely spread it out, because then you have more space to write on, and it's just easier also for your eyes to see when it's bigger. And again, like before, structure your mind map in the order of your monologue. You can also do that with mind maps. It might not look the same, but you can definitely do it. I'm going to show you in a second. And again, just like before, write down only the important things, only the important facts, verbs, descriptions, because that's really all you want to remember and all you want to really kind of have fixed in your head, because then you can just build sentences around those facts and make them up as you go. So here we have an example of the second exam that we're going to look at next week. And it is that you have been asked to hold a presentation in class about the issue of global warming, as this is one of the most pressing issues at the moment. So as you can see, it's a very similar topic, but here you are a student. Your task is to tell your classmates about global warming and pollution. Talk about why pollution is such a big contributor to global warming, the impact of globalization on pollution, and what we could do to produce less pollution. So it's more, this exam is more focused on pollution, as we just saw. So how could we incorporate these three, like that, these 3 bullet points into a beautiful mind map that will then help us in our monologue. We could do it like that, for example. So as you can see here, I've jotted down the main words of each bullet point. So the first one is pollution, globalization, and actions that you can take. And again, I've used different colors for each bullet point or each point. And yeah, that's something that really stands out, actually, that really helps. So remember to bring lots of different colors to your exam. Okay, so the first bullet point is why pollution is such a big contributor to global warming. So what you could say here, or what you could think about here, is that there's many different sources of pollution. There's cars, lots and lots and lots of cars, lots and lots of factories that produce a lot of pollution. So very big quantities of pollution, and they are also constantly producing them. So there's 24/7, there's cars going around the world, there's factories producing stuff all around the world, and so that's kind of why pollution is really such a big also think about airplanes, actually, why pollution is such a big contributor to global warming. And now, what does globalization have to do with that? So when you think about globalization, which means actually that there's a lot, how am I saying that? Yeah, so sometimes you have to think before you speak. There's a few big companies out there in the world that have their products all over and in every country, and everyone has the same product. And so those are global companies, and they produce their products somewhere in some country, and then those products travel all over the world. They need to travel for many miles to reach their destination, and that's where they produce unnecessary pollution. Yeah, so that's something that you could think about in this second bullet point. And then the third bullet point asks you again about actions that people could take so as not to produce so much pollution. As we talked about in our first example, you could go by foot or by bike or use public transport. That's a very good way to reduce your own pollution that you are actually just producing every day by going in your car, which you do still produce pollution, or you do still contribute to producing pollution by going by bus, but it's not that much because there's lots and lots of other people going on the same bus. Yeah, and also, like I said before, buy locally. Buy your groceries, your clothing, everything that you need locally, so that it doesn't have to travel so far. And as you can see, those are two very different types of note-taking. But I think they're very interesting, and you really have to think about how your notes will look like before taking them, because in that way you can make much better use of your time during the preparation, so that you can really think about the topic and not just think about, oh my god, I have lots of different words on this sheet, how am I supposed to kind of make something useful out of that? And that's why today we talked about those different strategies of taking notes. as I said, next week we're going to look at 2 different exams about global warming and pollution. And so if you're interested in that, stay tuned next week. And other than that, maybe you want to think about how you're taking your notes. And if you have any questions, just ask them in the live chat or in the questions under our videos. And so I think that's all for today. I'm going to see you next time again. And so until then, bye.